Arrow Season 2, Episode 6, titled Keep Your Enemies Closer. This episode was pretty good because we got to see, all the characters, or at least, the team, the hero team, or, vigilante team, go off to somewhere else outside of Starling City. And in this episode, they go off to Moscow. And, they do so because Diggle has to rescue who we thought was just, an old partner who's helping him look for Deadshot. And we find out in this episode that he was actually married to her, and of course I can't recall her name at the moment, but he used to be married to her, and we get that in this episode, and I love that they had that sort of simple connection when every time they showed her, it was just like they knew each other, they went to war, it was like that type of bond, so obviously they were really close because they went through war together. And then we see in this episode it's actually even more personal than just old war buddies. They were married at one point, and then as Diggle said, they didn't know how to stay married once they got out of the war. But it was a great reveal to learn that Diggle was actually married at one point, and that he was married to someone we did get to see multiple times in season one. And I think she was only in this season one time outside of this episode, but it was great to get that little reveal. It was a really good moment, they kind of, I guess they made it pretty short just because he was kind of getting through and letting them all know why she was so important. But it was a really good scene, and it had that impact on the characters, in the scene, because they were just learning it just like everyone who was watching it. So it was a really good scene, and I just enjoyed just how that entire scene went. It was really good. And I also enjoyed just the episode in general where, Diggle was the one who really had the problem. He had to go through and, he dealt with a lot of stuff in this episode. He dealt with, finding Deadshot and basically promising not to kill him, and he doesn't. And he also learns that, his brother was killed by Deadshot, not because Deadshot missed, but because Deadshot was hired to kill Diggle's brother for some reason. And the best thing about it is the fact that the people who, contracted Deadshot was the Hive, which, for anyone who forgot, directly connects to the alderman who revealed himself as Brother Blood, because Brother Blood is the leader of the Hive. So that instantly connects Diggle to this guy, and I'm sure that'll come up, in this season somehow. But I was like, when I first saw it, I was like, I wish I just had a camera on me, because I was so happy when they mentioned that that's who, contracted Deadshot, because it was such a good connection that I never would have expected. But it was great to see that. So the introduction of, this alderman who, at one point was a good guy, and we find out is a bad guy, we find out now. And of course, people who don't know this wouldn't know, but, if you remember Teen Titans and stuff, that instantly connects Diggle to him in some way. So it'll be great to see how that plays out, how Diggle finds out, and how he deals with that alongside Oliver, because, of course, Oliver being Green Arrow, he's going to be the one to deal with it. But I love that part. That was probably my favorite part of the episode, just because of the, amazing connection that it had. So I'm excited to see where that goes. But the entire episode was really, really good, and I enjoyed the fact that Diggle was the one who had to deal with all this stuff, and he was the one, going through all the fighting and dealing with all this emotional distress, like finding his ex-wife, and then, coming face to face with Deadshot, and, learning the truth and all this other stuff. And hopefully, like, I'm sure he and his ex-wife won't end up back together, but, in that end scene when they're together, it was, he was obviously mentioning how she was always the exception, and he could still love her and hate Deadshot, even though it didn't work. I can't think of her name, but I guess his sister-in-law, or how that works. But hopefully she'll come into the series a little bit more, and he'll try to work things out with her. So that would be cool to see him kind of get into a relationship again, and it actually works this time. But the other side of it was, it's still in Moscow. Oliver basically being Oliver Queen, trying to hold up the facade so that he could have an actual good reason to be in Moscow, so that he can help Diggle and keep appearances up. And he ends up sleeping with his partner, and Felicity finds out, and it's obvious that season one and this season, Felicity likes Oliver. That's been obvious. She says all the silly stuff by accident, but she likes Oliver. And when she finds out that he slept with, Terminator, because that's what I'm gonna call her, she's really, she's upset by that. And when they talk in the end, he mentions how it's a lot easier for him to be with people he doesn't actually care about, and couldn't see himself with for any long period of time. And that still doesn't really help because Felicity cares about him, so she wants to be the one with him. So it's kind of sad to see her actually deal with that, because normally it's just she says a silly line and then she's like, well, I gotta think about what I'm saying before I say it. And in this, she actually got like a hard hit to the face where he's about to walk out the room and she just like Terminator just breezes right on past. So it was interesting to see that, and I'm sure that'll play throughout the rest of the season, or at least for a couple of episodes. And I'm sure Diggle will end up finding out about that because he didn't really know in this episode. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of changes things. And we also got to see Roy and Thea have their little moment where Roy is trying to help Oliver in the beginning and stuff, and he gets arrested again. And Thea worries about her mom, and she dumps him. And it was really quick. It was like they didn't spend a ton of time on it, like them being sad and this and that. It was just Lori came in, Thea broke up with Roy, and then Roy and Thea got back together because her mom said, don't worry about me because I want you to be happy, pretty much. And I enjoyed that because for one, it was really quick, and they didn't use a ton of extra time on something that they could have explained just like they did, or scene by scene, and then it was resolved. So I enjoyed that, and it was just cool to see Roy in the beginning actually help out Oliver for like the 2 seconds he helped when he tackled the guy. But that was good too. And then lastly, we got the flashback, which was really good this episode, and that's mostly because we got to see that both Shadow and Slade are alive. So that was great. Slade is, of course, burned up. He has half his face burnt, which kind of just leads more towards the whole Deathstroke thing. So we'll have to wait and see. But he's alive. Shadow's alive. Oliver thought he was okay because he found his ex-girlfriend. Already forgot her name from last week, but he thinks things are fine. And then in the end of the episode, she tricks him, and we find out she even gave up his real name, even though she told him like, don't give your real name, don't say what happened. And in the end of this episode, she tricks him. And initially I thought maybe she did it because the guy kind of told her to, because he thought he's probably lying or this or that. But once he said like you're going back to the island, Oliver, it seemed like she kind of just screwed him over. Like she tricked him into revealing the fact that they were Shadow and Slade were alive, and she gave up his name. So it's kind of hard to judge exactly what happened, but I know based off of what happened in the last couple of episodes, she and Oliver do end up working together, and obviously with Slade. So I don't know if she is still on his side and she did that because she had to, but we'll have to wait and see. But I'm excited for how that plays out. And also, Shadow and Slade got pretty close, and I think they did that on purpose. I don't think that's going to lead to anything, and I think the writers did that just to mess with people, where like they say this stuff and it seems like they're getting super personal, and then of course it's like Slade's temperature is dropping, so Shadow like gets under the covers and like basically holds on to him. I think they did that just to mess with our heads. So hopefully that doesn't end up like throwing a crazy wrench into things just for random relationship stuff. But once again, we'll have to wait and see. And I'm excited to see what the heck happens in the flashbacks, because we know Slade survives at least until the end of whatever happens there. But we still don't really know what happened to Shadow, and I think she's still alive. Hopefully she is. I don't know, but we do. We've had the mentions in last season that Oliver does leave the island at one point, and I don't think it was just on the ship. I feel like he left like somewhere else. So maybe we'll get to a couple of hints to where he may or may not have gone this season. But this episode I thought was really good. It was great to have Diggle as the focus. It had some interesting reveals. Him actually having been married, his brother being the contract being H.I.V.E, which once again relates to brother blood. and just the episode in general felt really well done. So comment below, let me know what you thought of this episode, favorite parts, least favorite parts. I guess the big question to ask is, where do you think things are gonna go between Oliver and Felicity now that they've had this episode and they've kind of had this you know upsetting interaction? Where do you think things are gonna go now between them? So comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.